Wow. Where do we start after a weekend like conference ending with Baptism Sunday? That was an incredible weekend. I hope you were there. But I think we start with the next decision that helps to outwork our yes and amen in our today, instead of just leaving conference behind us and remembering it as a great emotional high. David Ryan Cook, who was leading worship with us all weekend, has a great song called Monday Morning Faith that I think really hits the mark here. One of the verses says, "Hell's not scared of a Sunday faith if it only leads to empty praise. What really makes darkness run is when the saints arise and praise on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to know you, to love you, to choose you first on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday." So my question becomes, how do we live our yes and amen on the other 6 days of the week? I think it's by knowing that those conference highs are as real as your reality is today. But when the music fades and the emotions have subsided and we're looking at deadlines or bills, we're stuck in traffic, how do we find that same faithfulness and power of God in our everyday and ordinary? If you were at Saturday night of conference, you would have received this is my amen card. Part of the inspiration for this comes from Joshua 4:19 to 24, which says, "On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. The people set up at Gilgal 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, 'In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them that Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you crossed over. And the Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us when we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples on the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God.'" The Bible teaches us to set memorials in our lives. As simple as a card that you got at conference, or maybe it's more elaborate, or maybe it's writing something on your bathroom mirror or in your journal. Write down what God spoke to you. Remember what God did in your heart this weekend, and then let that amen, the so be it, resolve in your spirit with a strong determination. We sang a song on Saturday night called Amen. It was by Rita Springer. She also has a song called My Yes, and it talks about the not letting go, not stepping down, but holding on to my yes is my yes is my yes. Get songs like these and truths in your spirit. Also, share with a close friend or your small group what God's put on your heart. Let them pray for you. Let them hold you accountable, or let them hold your arms up when you're feeling the weight, when the going gets tough. These reminders help us to remember that calling isn't just for special moments and days. They remind us that God's faithfulness doesn't stay inside a church building, but helps remind us to trust that he still answers prayers, is good on his promise, and his presence is there even when we don't feel it tangibly. He's with us in the valley and in the shadow and in the traffic and in that day-to-day and the sleepless nights with your little kids. And trust me, we need those mountaintop moments in our lives. They help carry us through the valley seasons. Those mountaintop moments, those conference moments, they give us perspective. They help us get above the clouds and the fog of life and inspire us and they let light and hope carry us. But I hope you let that light and that hope carry you down the mountain and into your everyday life. There's a story that I love that really talks specifically about that. It's in Luke's account of the Transfiguration. Jesus and his closest disciples go up the mountain. And on the mountaintop, God shows up. We see Jesus in all his splendor. He's talking with God and some of the Old Testament prophets, and the disciples are blown away. They want to stay in this moment. They say, Jesus, let us build some shelters and memorialize this moment. And Jesus explains to them that this is what heaven's going to be. But right now on earth, we're not made to stay in these moments. We need to carry what you've just seen down the mountain. So Jesus takes the disciples back down the mountain, and he gets thrown right back into the thick of people needing his help and his deliverance. But there's a line in Luke's account that says, and when the people saw Jesus, they were overcome with wonder. So my prayer for you today would be that people around you would notice that you have been in God's presence this past weekend. That wonder would be in their eyes because there's something noticeably different about your life. Isn't that a beautiful thought? That because you've spent time in God's presence, that others might notice. If you're in your small group right now, why don't you talk about some moments that God spoke to you at conference? Or if you just got baptized, tell your group about your journey and your story that led you to that place. What made today the day for you? And if you weren't at conference, why don't you share with some previous moments of your life where you felt God's call or you're reminded about his faithfulness in a specific way? Stories just like that account in Joshua. These stones are set up so you can tell your children and your grandchildren the stories of God's faithfulness. Us sharing our stories, our testimony, and what God does in our life helps inspire those around us and encourages us and also others. So open up, be brave enough to get vulnerable, to share what God's been doing in your life. Can I pray for you? God, I thank you for the incredible work that you did in hearts and lives this past weekend. God, I thank you that you are working mightily and tangibly amongst our church. God, and for those who you spoke clearly to for the first time or reminded them of calling from decades ago, I pray that you give them the courage and the tenacity and the so be it, the resolve of amen, to continue to walk out bravely what you've called them into. God, I pray that stories would inspire other stories, God, and that more lives you can continue to be transformed, that people would be inspired to take more next steps because of how you are moving in their lives. So I thank you for this conference. I thank you for this time, God. I thank you for everyone listening to this video. Would you just bless them and be with them this week? Amen. Thanks, team. Have a great week.